All throughout my gamer life, I've played a countless amount of games, among which many ended up having an enormous impact on me. Whether it was through a brilliant multiplayer experience, an engaging RPG, a storytelling masterpiece, or a franchise that was just above everything else, some games brand you, and you'll always love them for it. But even though these opinions make the most of our gamer identity, we can still keep an impartial view on the gaming world and recognize the gems it has to offer. The year is 2005. Battlefield 2 is reigning supreme on PC, Resident Evil 4 came out first to start the year, and Sony just launched one of its biggest franchises. And among those great games, one will stand out as a unique and brilliantly unstable experience. Developed by Team Ico, who released a game of the same name back in 2001, Shadow of the Colossus quickly gains the attention of the gaming world through praising reviews and its unique and original style. It wasn't perfect by any means though. In fact, the PlayStation 2 was highly stressed by the game, which led its frame rate to be quite atrocious. That's partly why, 6 years later, Sony released an HD remaster of both Ico and Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 3. The games looked a lot cleaner and frame rate was finally stable, but somehow that SOTC itch persisted. And so, 13 years after its original release, the game got a proper remake on the PS4 made by another team, Bluepoint Games. Completely remade from the ground up, this version of Shadow of the Colossus featured new graphics, better controls, updated audio, and was even hiding new secrets. But most importantly, to the lucky owners of a PS4 Pro, the game was finally playable in 60 frames per second. And it is through this remade version that I will try and explain why I think Shadow of the Colossus is one of the most important games ever made. Let's start at the core of the experience, the reason that made us all hooked in the first place. The game basically takes the David versus Goliath idea to the next level. You play as Wanda, a young character equipped with a sword and a bow. Your trusty steed, Agro, is your main asset to move around this huge open world, which you must travel and discover with little to no help in order to find your foes. These foes are 16 in total, scattered around the map, and as the name of the game suggests, they all are Colossi. In a predetermined order, you must find a way to defeat these gigantic creatures with the few resources that you have. The game gives you two variables to take care of, a health bar and a stamina bar. Stamina being the most important one, as you'll find out that most of the game consists of climbing things and making sure you don't fall off to the ground. Believe me, some of those you really don't want to fall off. Basically, Shadow of the Colossus is a succession of what I would call enigma bosses. For each boss, you need to figure out the game mechanic to climb onto the Colossus, and to then find its weak points so that you can whack them a few times with your sword. All while paying attention to your stamina, of course. Unlike most games, there are no mobs, no other objectives. Aside of gathering apples, killing lizards, and finding safe spots, the game purely functions under this schematic. Ride your horse, find the boss, kill it, on to the next one. And even though this might seem simplistic, it actually hides a huge layer of complexity. However, before touching on that point, let's first have a look at the lore of the game and how the idea of a young dude going toe-to-toe against giant creatures somehow makes complete sense. Shadow of the Colossus takes place in a fictive world. The first thing we notice about said world is the fictional language characters use. This is nothing new to the developers at Team Ico, since all three of their production happen to utilize this language. As it is completely made up, this language immediately puts us in an unknown world where our laws of physics become irrelevant, since we know very clearly that all of what we see is happening in a completely fictive environment. we instinctively accept any idea the game throws at us. The divinity that is dormant, the colossi, and all the fantasy elements that can be found throughout the game are then never put in doubt, nor do they need any justification. This goes a long way to create a believable world in which the player can immerse himself without second thought. In this video, you'll see that I won't talk much about the two other games made by the developers, being Ico and The Last Guardian. All three games of Team Ico have a lot in common, and as we'll see in a second, they even share some very odd similarities. But I strongly believe that Shadow of the Colossus is by far their best piece of art, and that it shouldn't necessarily be linked to any other experience, hence why I decided to focus on this game specifically. That being said, it is still nice to notice that those games are happening in the same world, and that two of them could be very related. Indeed, it is believed that Shadow of the Colossus is a prequel to Ico, a belief that makes complete sense, but which is said by the devs themselves to be open to interpretation. Personally, I just like to see Shadow of the Colossus as its own thing. So we've talked about game design and lore, but the truth is, we haven't even touched the surface of what makes this game so special. Let's then start talking about the insane level of thought that went into Shadow of the Colossus, starting with its level design. To explain how this game works very clearly, let's imagine a circle. That circle represents the whole map of the game. That's your play area, where you can travel to almost any places you can see. Now we'll mark a dot at the center of that circle. That's your hub, where you will return every time you defeat Colossus. And so, every time you kill one of those giants, you spawn back at the starting point, get on your horse, find the next boss's direction, and make your way there. What this means is that you'll experience this map in at least 15 different setups, since there are 16 bosses. Each time you will uncover a new part of this desolated wasteland, which will leave you to feel more and more at home in a world that was previously uncharted territory. The game does a great job to send you in very different spots on the map in what seems like a random pattern. Aside of the first and final boss, there is no real signification to the colossi placement. They're just placed as such so that by the end of the game, you'll have uncovered most of the player area. There is still room for exploration though, and it is very rewarding to uncover new paths and secrets on your own. Let's put things in perspective for a second. We are in 2005 on the PlayStation 2. Most games are very linear and the pure notion of open world is yet to be truly explored. Very few examples of open world game exist at that time. In fact, most open world games would more likely be MMOs like World of Warcraft. There are still some exceptions like the Spider-Man franchise, but it isn't until the next generation of console that this genre will thrive. And even then, on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, the notion of open world happened to designate a very specific kind of game. Think back at Prototype, Crackdown, or Infamous, for example. These games were the precise definition of open world at that time. Games where the player was thrown into a world with superhuman powers to do whatever he wanted. Some sort of sandbox, in a way. This kind of open world died with the PS4 and the X1 generation, which led to the evolution of the genre. Nowadays, a lot of games are open world, some filled with stuff to do, and some choosing the emptiness approach. So I will ask you this. Isn't it crazy that a genre which took an entire generation of consoles to define itself was somehow already available back in 2005? To say that Shadow of the Colossus was ahead of its time is a big understatement, and no doubt its minimalist approach to the genre inspired a great many people. But this open world, on top of building a new and exciting gameplay experience, is also a big story element. If the story of Shadow of the Colossus may seem simplistic at first, it ends up being the most important part of the game once completed. It all starts on a cliffside, as our main character, Wanda, rides his horse while carrying what looks like a body. He soon arrives to a sealed and forbidden land, where he will seek help. In the first few minutes of the game, you understand very clearly what the stakes are. You're a young dude who wants to save his dead girlfriend, and you're about to make a deal with the devil to get it done. Basically, that's about it. Yet, while you place this lifeless body on the temple's altar, you are yet to realize how deep all of this is gonna get. So, Wanda just spoke his only line of dialogue in the game and accepted the deal Dorman gave him. In order to save the girl, he must defeat 16 Colossi. Easy peasy. And on that note, you start your journey, mount up your horse, and go to the first boss area. But as soon as you get out of the temple, you immediately get intimidated by the scale and feel of the land. Something is clearly not right here. But nevertheless, you reach the first Colossus, get really hyped because the game is dope as fuck, and kill it. Now, I want you to watch this very carefully. This is what you will see every time you defeat a Colossus. Obviously, you can definitely tell by the black stuff coming out of Wanda's mouth and belly that this quest is not going to be all good and shiny. And so, after you defeat your first boss, you understand that what you're doing is probably not very good. In a kind of sadistic way, the game lets you take control of your character as you're chased by the shadows to make you believe you can make a run for it. You never will, though. But it's not surprising. You were never deceived in the first place. You made a pact with the devil, and now you've just confirmed it's probably gonna go as bad as one might think. And at the end of the day, you're fine with it because, well, you just want to save the girl. And so you go on with the adventure, and defeat 2, 3, 6 more Colossi. And the only lines of dialogue you will hear up until the end of the game will be Dorman's hints at the next Colossus you must face. That's 16 lines of dialogue in total. So now fast forward a bit. You're at boss 8, starting at your hub like always. You instinctively go to the safe shrine, heal up, and then mount up your horse. You travel through the open hill while enjoying the sight, and you're thinking, damn aggro, you look cool. The peaceful loneliness of the land makes you sad, uneasy, and amazed. You raise your sword one last time before entering the shadows to make sure you're on the right track. And as you start riding through the narrow rocky path, you look at your horse, which for the life of him cannot seem to find its pathfinding, and you're thinking, damn aggro, you suck. But lo and behold, you somehow manage to get to the next area. The boss should be on the other side of that big rock, so you ride left to get around it. Once on the other side, you realize that the Colossus is actually inside the rock. After facepalming in your stupidity, You keep riding in the same direction. Great, now you've gone full circle and realize you could have just gone right from the start. But alas, you're here, so you decide not to waste any more time and enter the boss's lair. After a bit of wandering about, you get to the Colossus and start looking for a way to defeat him. And while you take your sweet ass time, standing still like an idiot, you get shot in the face and realize that, yeah, you can actually die in this game. Hopefully you just took some damage though. Now it's time to get in your tryhard pants.
Justice reigns from above.
After a while you end up finding the boss's mechanic. You repeat it a few times and kill him. As the shadow trails launch into the air, you still decide to run away for some reason, even though you know it's gonna hit you anyway. Done. You fall unconscious onto the ground. It's been about an hour since you started, and after all this, you're left on the loading screen asking yourself, why am I doing this again? That's why. So I'd like to apologize for this long-ass anecdote, but I think this is key to understand the next point I want to make. This shot right here is the most important shot in the game. Look at the architecture. Look at how everything is perfectly made so that all you see points at this one person. And so that as soon as you forget your purpose in the game, she's laying here, reminding you, waiting to be revived. And the devs make sure you really understand Wanda's motivation by simply zooming the camera while you go near her. It might seem like a little detail, but I assure you it's something you'll do every time when you wake up. It's a simple dramatic effect that goes a long way into creating a link between these two characters. But anyhow, this lady is awaiting her resurrection, so let's press on to the end. So at the end, you make your way to the last Colossus and really bad shit happens. Aggro commits seppuku so that you can live, and you're torn between being sad for the bastard or being happy for all the times he rode into a wall like a damn idiot. No, but seriously though, this moment makes me cry every time. You have to understand that Aggro is the only other character in the game. He's your only friend, aside of that eagle that wants to hang out now and again. For him to give his life as he brought us to our final battle is a heartbreaking moment. But you press on, kill the last boss, and lose consciousness. Now shit is about to go down. The group of villagers that was previously teased in the game arrive at the temple and assess the situation. As they do, Wanda gets TP'd back to said temple one last time, except this time he looks really bad. Seeing this, the villagers can't accept the atrocity that he committed and decide to kill him. Long story short, in a very emotional scene, as Wanda looks at the girl he wished to save, he becomes a part of Dormin, identical to the other parts he defeated. Dormin, now back at full power, takes possession of Wanda's body and becomes whole again. At this point you're given back the controls, as if you could do anything to prevent what will happen next. and the priest then banishes you from the world. Now, this is the best moment in the game. I didn't talk much about the music, but in one word, it's fucking awesome. You remember that track that played every time you defeated the Colossus? Now try going through this without feeling anything. And no matter what you do, your destiny is to fall into that void. And you know what? The game could end here. That is, if it just wanted to say that selling your soul to the devil isn't worth it. But obviously, it goes much further than that. Because you see, the notions of good and evil are one and the same in Shadow of the Colossus. When Dolmen takes possession of Wanda, he doesn't say, "We took the body of this weak human." He says, "We borrowed the body of this warrior." That tells you a lot about his character. If anything, this evil being is at least respectful of the task we managed to accomplish. And it is then not so surprising that Dolmen ends up being a man of his word. As promised, even though we were thrown to the abyss, the entity gives life back to Mono. So now you feel both happy and sad. Happy that in the end you succeeded to complete the one objective you were sent out to do, but sad that your main character won't be there to see it. But the game isn't done with you just yet. When you see him walking these steps, you're not just seeing a friend coming back to life. You're seeing a faithful companion who, despite falling off a fucking cliff, still manages to find its way back to you. In retrospect, if you think about it, every time we defeated a Colossus, we got TP'd back at the temple, but not aggro. He had to make the way back every time. And it is then with a lot of emotion that you witness his devotion once again. In this story segment, I haven't made much analysis for the simple reason that I believe it to be quite self-explanatory. However, what comes next isn't as easy to perceive, and so I will do my best to tell you what I understand from it. After the credits, Mono and Agro walk to the pond that swallowed Wander and find a strange baby in it. Now this is the part of the game where you go like, "What the f?" As so many great movies and pieces of art like to remind us, genius directors and visionaries often have something clever to say, and they often like to say it in a fucked up kind of way. Think back at 2001, A Space Odyssey and its space baby. The unicorn in Blade Runner. The penguin in the cave in Fight Club. The fucking pigs in Sentou Chihiro no Kamikaze. Or or the Spider-Man 3 dance. Anyway, you get the idea. There's always that one what the fuck moment that makes it that much more different from everything else. This baby is exactly that to Shadow of the Colossus. It basically stands as a somewhat happy ending, in which Wander is kinda given a second chance in life. This baby is both the cursed reincarnation of Wander and the kid Wander and Mono could have had if shit hadn't gone south. It's quite fucked up when you think about it, but hey, that's what you get for messing with the devil. So Mono takes the child and follows Agro, who seems to know exactly where he's going for some reason.
Come with me if you want to live.
And turns out the creepy temple you spent the whole game in was actually hiding a small paradise just a couple of floors above. A final way for the game to tell you that good and evil are part of the same idea, and that one will always bring the other. Oh yeah, and look, it's just like the beginning with the eagle. We call that cheap moving writing, but here it works, so whatever. So let's take a deep breath. That was a lot to take in, right? Or maybe not, I don't know. Honestly, I wasn't sure how to make this video. I've been wanting to compile my love for this game in an understandable fashion for a while, and I hope I've managed to get that across. Shadow of the Colossus to me is one of the most important games ever made, because of two reasons. One, because of how everything in this game is created for the purpose of another. Every aspect of Shadow of the Colossus is related. Game design, level design, story, music, and gameplay all come together to deliver this one very specific message and experience. Much more than in most games I have played. And the second reason is what this very message represents for the medium. Such a simple yet deep and engaging story should stand as a lesson to the industry, which teaches us that sometimes less equals more. In a day and age where heavy storytelling seems to be the new norm for high quality writing, it is nice to see that a game like Shadow of the Colossus exists to remind us what a single page of dialogue can bear. Every piece of art offers a vision of the world. And with this game, Team Eco shared a very accurate representation of our humanity. Now that you know everything, don't forget to remember that killing Colossi is not very nice, that making a deal with the devil is sort of a bad idea, and that no matter what you do, always go for the weak spots.